What's up, everybody? David from Headwaters Kayak. Behind me, I've got my personal fleet of paddles. You guys always ask about different paddles I'm using and why I use what, so I thought I'd break down what I actually paddle with, give you guys a little insight into what I look for in a paddle and what paddle would work for different styles of paddling. So let's check it out. So there's no real system to how I've set these up besides the fact that I probably use this one the least and I probably use that one the most, but let's just start from the beginning. Now this is the Bending Branches Angler Navigator. I have this paddle in a couple sizes, but I just brought the one to show you guys. I consider it a high angle paddle because it's a fairly large blade and it's easy to use at a high angle. So this one is a 240. This is something you'll see me use a lot when I'm demoing fishing kayaks. I also have this paddle custom made for me in a 205 centimeter paddle, and you've seen that in a bunch of videos. I've been using that paddle for years and years and years. But I use it less nowadays with the addition to some of these other paddles in my fleet. One thing I love about the Navigator is the blade face. It reminds me of a canoe blade. It's very smooth on the back side, very smooth on the front side. There's not a lot of dihedral. In fact, there's no dihedral. So it feels very slippery in the water. It glides and slices and moves through the water. It's also really buoyant. So when I'm pushing down on a brace or something like that, I have a ton of support from this paddle. But my favorite thing about it is just how I can move it through the water, link strokes, and always kind of maintain that feel of the water. When you add a ridge down the center, you lose a little bit of that kind of feel and dexterity. What you gain is a lot of traction in a forward stroke. A dihedral, or that little kind of W shape, will help the paddle to grip the water and make for a nice, smooth, even stroke. When you pull on it, it's going to go. So what I love about it is actually probably it's also its biggest weak point. Is if you don't have a great stroke or you're just starting off, you might feel this paddle to want to flutter or wander a little bit. Again, the flip side of that is the advantage of that smooth, effortless feel in the water. It's going to want to slice out of the water. The only downside of this, and this is just me personally now, is because it's got more surface area, it tends to put more pressure on my shoulder, which, as I think I've mentioned in a few videos, I've got a torn labrum that I'm kind of nursing and trying to rehab, and the bigger blade puts a lot of torque on that shoulder joint. So I haven't been using this one a whole lot. Next up is this paddle here, which has actually been out of production for almost a decade now, but I love it so much, so I thought I would show you guys. This is the Saltwood. That's how long it's been. I can't even remember the exact name of it. It's the Saltwood. It's not a Hustler. Hustler was a bigger blade. Can't remember. God, I can't believe I can't remember the name of this paddle. You've seen this in a million videos. If you've watched the channel a long time, I use this paddle a lot. It's still one of my absolute favorite paddles. So this is a bent shaft paddle. You can see that nice ergonomic bend there. And the way they do the bent shaft on this is really cool. It was actually two pieces of wood that were CNC'd out with a hollow core, and then they glued them together and fiberglass the outside to make it feel like a one-piece paddle. So it's fairly lightweight, even though it's wood. It's not as light as some of the all-carbon ones, but fairly lightweight for a wood paddle. The other thing I really like about this paddle is they use a balsa wood core. So instead of foam on this paddle, they use a balsa wood for the core, which again was CNC'd and laminated in. It's a very stout paddle, very good grip. It's got a tiny bit of dihedral, but not much. It's similar to the Bending Branches in that way, where it just wants to slide and glide and move through the water. I used to sell these in the shop in the early days. They were handmade in Portland. I got to do a factory tour and pick up a couple paddles when I was up there. And I've always just loved and cherished this paddle. I'll never, ever get rid of it because I know I'll never find another one. I would love to find this exact paddle blade in a 205. So I had it a high angle paddle, but we'll see if that ever comes up. Anyway, it's not a paddle I use a ton anymore, but it is a paddle that I'm a big fan of, and occasionally you'll see it. The only gripe or downside of this paddle is it's one piece. So it takes up, you know, my whole Subaru. It goes in between my center console all the way to the back hatch. There's no option to break it down. So still love it though. Next up is probably one of my nicest paddles. I absolutely love this paddle. And it's also a bent shaft. This one's made by Lindell. This is a Lindell Storm. For years and years and years, I used a Werner Cypress and thought it was the best paddle ever made. And I remember I was at the Golden Gate Sea Kayak Symposium and somebody put this paddle in my hand and said, just go try it out. Go demo it and see what you think. And I went out and surfed the Yellow Bluff Tide Race, did some rolls, and I just remember thinking, I didn't think the paddles could get better than a Cypress, and then I felt the storm. It's an incredible paddle. Dude, the Canadian geese are fierce out here right now. I swear, anytime I get on video and start talking, nature just goes wild. They're like, oh, somebody's talking. Everybody, do you hear them? Anyway, Lendl makes a super high-end, super nice paddle. The attention to detail is second to none. Handcrafted in the US. They were made in, I think, Rochester, New York. However, just recently they discontinued production. And at this current moment of this video, they are not making paddles. So this paddle I'll cherish and I'll keep for a long time. Really cool paddles. One thing I like about the Lendl paddles, they use what we call a trailing face. And that's kind of hard to see here. But where my hand grip is actually behind the power face or the catch of the stroke. You see that? So the blade is actually kicked a little bit forward. And so what that means is I'm taking a stroke, my hand is actually pulling the paddle through the water. And what that does is it eliminates all flutter. If you think about a truck pulling a trailer, as the truck pulls away, the trailer falls in behind it, right? Now, if you're backing it up, the trailer wants to wander. It's really the same thing with your paddle. If your hand is in front of your paddle blade as you're moving through the water, it just wants to catch, fall in place, and get traction. So really unique bend in this one. I like the angles. I like the index. I love everything about this paddle except for one small detail, and that is the overall surface area and that shoulder. I have kind of taken a step back from using this paddle just because of that shoulder. I love everything about it. If it was a little smaller, I'd probably use it more. But anyway, the other thing that's kind of neat about this one is the adjustable ferrule. It has length adjustment as well as feather adjustment. Really nice locking mechanism. You just flip the lever, lock it in, and you're good to go. Next paddle up in our line is another Lendl. This one is a little different, and I probably use this one more. It's got the same exact bent shaft, a little bit different ferrule system because it's older. I picked this one up at $150 at Portland Kayak. They were closing it out because they've had it forever and nobody was buying it. And I was like, man, that's crazy. The Cadence is such a good paddle. So I snatched it up. A lot of people don't love the Cadence because of the small blade, but that's exactly what I liked about it. I picked this up when I started to have a little bit of shoulder issues, and it's been great. It's a little bit less fatiguing. So you're doing more paddle strokes per minute to keep this thing going than you would with the Storm, but it just is a little bit easier on the joints, easier on the body, and I feel like it still has plenty of grip and control. A little bit different blade shape, more similar to like a high angle, like a Werner Schuna, or like a Whiskey from Aquabound. It's got a very flat tip, so really knifey, smooth through the water. A little bit of dihedral down the blade. The other thing is it doesn't have a foam core. They also make this paddle in the Cadence X, which is a little bit bigger blade. That's a very popular paddle as well. But one of my favorites, and one that if nobody's watching and the camera's not on, I usually will take this thing out just because I really love the way this paddle feels on the water. Only downside is I don't like to really promote it because you can't go buy it. You know, that's kind of a bummer. Okay, next up. Now this seems like a weird paddle, I'm sure, unless you're familiar with wing paddles or racing paddles, but this is called a wing paddle. This one's made by Stellar. This is their mid-wing, so they're middle size. A 205 centimeter, but they use the same ferrule as the Lendl. That one slides out so you can adjust the length of the paddle up to 5 centimeters, adjust the feather, lock it in place. And you see I've got tape on this one because when I'm using this paddle, it's just all about an efficient forward stroke. Moving forward, I want to know where my hand position is. You see I also have this white bit on the end of the paddle. That way I can kind of gauge, am I fully submerging the blade? Do I need to lengthen the paddle out so I can just get full insertion at the catch of my stroke? So just a couple little marks to kind of help me gauge where I'm at while I'm paddling. The nice thing about a wing paddle is as you plant this thing in the water and catch, it has an instant grab. And as I rotate through my stroke, it actually wants to fly out through the water and give you a little bit more propulsion per stroke. I think it's like 15%. Don't quote me on that, but it is noticeable when you're using it. It feels like a cheat code. It feels like you've got a little electric assist on your boat or something like that. The only downside to a wing paddle, why I don't use it all the time, is when I need to go brace or I need to do a draw stroke. The wing shape is a lot more clumsy to do those sort of things with, or a roll. It can do it all, but it's just a lot more clumsy. And you see the way I paddle. I like to be close to shore, maneuvering my boat, kind of playing with my kayak. Rarely am I out there going hard, going fast. I pretty much only use this thing if I'm on a mission to get somewhere far, or I'm doing a race, or you know, if I'm coming out to the lake to go do a, you know, 15-mile loop and I want to get a workout, this is the paddle I use. Next up is these guys. I have them both because it's basically the same paddle. It's just one is straight shaft, one is bent shaft. This is the new Aquabound Tetra, and I've been using both a ton. I use a straight shaft because it's a nice spare. If I'm using my Greenland paddle, I'll switch back and forth. And I just like the way that a straight shaft fits on my deck as opposed to the bent shaft. But I do like the way the bent shaft feels a lot. This one's got the posit lock ferrule system, so you've got a push button here. Allows you to pop it apart. And then I can set the feather angle at 15 degrees, click it together, and it's rock solid. This is probably the nicest production paddle on the market right now that I can think of. It's about 15% lighter even than like a Werner Kamano, which is another foam core low angle paddle like this. It also has a little bit more buoyancy and a little bit more float in the blades, which I really like. And then probably the biggest factor is the lamb lock. It's a Kevlar stitched edge that goes around the outside of it. And you can see, man, I have just abused the heck out of this paddle for like 6 months, and it's held up to everything I've thrown at it. It's been super impressive. When you grip it, one thing you'll notice, maybe you can even hear, it's very sticky feeling. Not like it leaves a residue, but it has like a film over the top of it that just allows you to grip the paddle. When your hands are wet and you grip this, there's no sliding around, you know right where you're at. It's got a really good index. And I really like the ergonomic bend that Aquabound uses. It's a slight trailing face, not as noticeable as the Lindell paddles, but still noticeable. And it also has a bit of dihedral throughout the whole paddle. So Aquabound's kind of known for that. And they carry it all the way to the tip, which I was a little concerned about. I was like, oh, is it gonna feel nice, move through the water well? But the way they designed it is that foam core goes all the way out to the tip, which at first I thought was a little kind of funky looking. But the reason they did it is that quiets down the catch of the stroke. They did a lot of testing, and when you enter this paddle in the water, it feels just like instant grip. There's no noise, there's no kerplunk, there's no anything. The other thing I like about it, it's not a huge surface area, so easy on my shoulders. The lightest paddle next to my Greenland paddle of the whole bunch, just insanely light, insanely stiff, and very durable. So, been using this one a ton. One thing I forgot to mention about the Tetra is that technically this is a low angle paddle. So a low angle paddle means like this. As I'm taking a stroke, my top hand is about my chest level, okay? A high angle paddle stroke is more up here where my top hand's crossing over in front of my eyebrows. When I first got the Tetra, I was a little concerned that I wouldn't like the low angle paddle because I don't really care for the Werner Kamano. It just doesn't work well as a high angle paddle. It's got too much scoop to it. But the Tetra is neutral enough that I can use it pretty much at any angle, and it's quiet, it's silent, it glides through the water without any kerplunks or without any cavitation and bubbles. So I know they're working on a high angle version. I'm sure we'll see a high angle version of the Tetra come out at some point from Aquabound. But for where I'm at and with my shoulder injury, this thing's been absolutely perfect for me this year. It's actually really nice to finally be able to talk about these things because I've had them forever, but I've kind of just been casually putting them in videos, but not really talking about it. So now it's open, it's out to the public, you can buy them everywhere. So go check one out if you're interested. They're not cheap. This is probably, I don't know, up there with the most expensive paddles you can buy, but it's crazy lightweight. I think it's like 21 ounces. Well worth the money in my opinion, and definitely one to check out. Or if you're at a demo day, any of my events this summer, definitely ask me and I'll put one in your hands. Okay, last paddle of the day. Probably my favorite paddle right now, if I'm being honest with you, for a couple reasons. One, that shoulder, but two, I'm just having a lot of fun with Greenland rolling and Greenland paddling again. I grew up Greenland paddling. When I got into it, I immediately wanted to learn how to roll, and part of the rolling culture, if you dive into that, is Greenland rolling. You see a lot of people in sea kayaks, you know, maybe even in the whole hooded thing, and they're out there doing all sorts of trick rolls using a paddle like this. Now, it's not just for rolling. A lot of people will think that it's like, oh, it's just kind of a one-trick paddle. It's really not. It doesn't seem like this narrow, skinny blade would give you the power of these larger blades, but actually it does. If you compare surface areas on these two paddles, right? It's about half the width, but it's twice the length. So when I'm putting this paddle in the water, there's not maybe as much catch as I hit the water, but once I get this paddle moving, it's actually a ton of power, a ton of catch. And then if I need a little bit more support, like say I'm doing a sweep stroke, I can now turn the paddle in my hands and extend that paddle blade out to get a ton more leverage. And so that's one of the things I really like about Greenland paddles. It's a very fluid stroke. I really like a soft shoulder so I can move the paddle throughout my hands. There's no like real set hand position. Although the Kayak from Gear Labs does have little raised bumps to kind of give you a rough idea, I find myself paddling with this very dynamically. If I'm out doing a brace, I'm over here. If I'm doing a draw stroke, I'm moving this paddle around a lot in my hands. And then of course, super easy to roll. If you're moving this paddle through the water, it's gonna find the surface and it's gonna provide a ton of support so you can roll your kayak back up. Greenland paddles aren't for everybody, but if you have any sort of shoulder issues, wrist issues, neck issues, definitely check one out. Or if you've just been paddling with a Euro paddle forever and you wanna try something different, I highly recommend playing with it. I think you'll enjoy it and be surprised at just how fun the Greenland paddle is. The other thing I like about my Greenland paddle is it makes a great spare. You'll see it a lot of times just strapped to my deck. I have a little camera mount I mount on my paddle that stands up. So if I just want to mix it up on a paddle, or if my body's getting tired or fatigued, I can always switch out to my Greenland. It makes a great spare. I think that's it. Okay, I think that's it. That's my current kayak paddle lineup. Maybe eventually I'll do my single bladed paddle because I've got a ton of those as well. It's a lot of really fancy gear. I've been very blessed over the years to have amazing support from pretty much every one of these manufacturers you see behind me, with the exception of the Saltwood. I bought that one at retail. But you know, Gear Labs has come on to support the channel this year. Aquabound has always been a huge supporter. They've hooked me up with a bunch of paddles over the year. Lendl last year gave me a few paddles. So I guess what I'm saying is it's not a fully unbiased review because all these paddles were definitely given to me, or I purchased them for super cheap or a special pro deal. But this is what I use, and I can use anything. Like, I want to use whatever I like the best. Like, I have the Lendl and I choose to use the Tetra because right now it's easier on my body and I'm liking it more. So it's not like this is just some, you know, cheesy paid endorsement. This is definitely the quiver of paddles that I use and that I love and that I get excited about. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you found that video insightful. If you have any more questions on the paddles, go ahead and leave those below in the comment section. And until next time, this is Dan wishing you happy paddling. We'll see you on the next one.